Hello, everyone, and welcome to Recipe for Reality. If you're watching on our subathon, thank you for watching. We're running about a half hour behind, but we decided to push Marvel trivia a half hour behind, Survivor trivia a half hour behind, so that way we could start draft day a half hour in. We're all gonna make it work. We're gonna make it work. But Zach and I are here to recap some Survivor before we get into some Survivor trivia. Zach, this has been a wild 2 weeks. We literally last we were talking, we both had Hunter and Tiffany at the 1 and 2 spots, and in the both weeks, they have both gone home with idols in their pocket. Zach, what is going on in Survivor? What is
I'll tell you
going
what's
on
going
in this
on.
game?
I'll tell you what's going on. It's a good season. It's a good season. So someone, I don't know if I said this on the last on the last Recipe for Reality that we did, but someone looked at me the other day and said, I hate this season of Survivor. And I looked them back in the eye and I said, are you actually watching? Because this is, like, in my opinion, this is probably one of the best seasons of Survivor that I have seen as a fan who has really only watched from 41 till now, because I feel like every week I expect something and then see something completely different. I mean, we thought Q was going home like weeks ago. We thought Q wasn't going to make it to, I think it was like 8, maybe 9, and now we're sitting at 7. And I will say, like, right now I have him in my I have him in my rankings very low, because I think that there's always just a possibility that he could go home. But right now, and this might be preemptive, Dale, but he might, and you might agree with me, he might be a lock for final 3 at this point.
Right. Well, and it's very interesting. Yeah, because Q is someone who I feel like should always be low in the rankings, because I think there's always a chance they just
Right.
eventually vote him out. But the thing is, and I think this is something that this season I'm giving a lot of credit for, is that when there's big threats, they're taking them out. And I know around the mid merge point with the soda boot, I know Venus was like, we got to look at Hunter and Tevin. But now that they've looked at Hunter and Tevin, now that they've looked at Tiffany, I mean, those are 3 huge threats, because Tevin is going to sway any jury. Hunter is going to, play idols and win challenges. Tiffany had an idol. And I think it's one of those things where everyone is realizing that the biggest threats have to go, and they're actually acting on it instead of waiting to make the move. Now, the problem is, once you make the move, you then become the biggest threat, which I think is why we might see a little bit of worry for Maria going forward now, because Maria had to make this big move against Tiff. But the good thing is, when you have people like Q and like Liz and like Venus, who are such big social pariahs, this cast can afford to make the big moves, because they're always still going to be in front. Because even if Maria makes this move now, next week she could just come and be like, listen, we can go for Liz or Q or Venus. These are still bigger, more toxic personalities. And that's where I think I'm getting a lot of a Gabon energy, Survivor Gabon, where it's like you're either seeing a huge, massive threat go out, like Marcus or Charlie or Corinne, or you're seeing like the most annoying person who's rubbing everyone the wrong way, like Randy or Crystal, go home. Like, it's never really the boot you think it's going to be, but then it makes sense at the end. And we might just get a misfit final 3, which has me thinking, if we get Q, Liz, and Venus in the end, who's winning that? So, and I think there's a very obvious answer, which I don't know if everyone would think, but what are your thoughts, though? Because right now what we're looking at is that whoever's going to win is going to bring 2 of those 3, are going to bring either Liz and Venus, Liz and Q, or Q and Venus. That is the winning scenario. If you sit next to Charlie, Maria, or Kenzie in the end, or Ben even, Ben is
you're going to lose.
Guy, you're probably going to lose. But you could beat Ben, because Ben is not the best gamer. But again, Ben is such a social threat that, like, I feel like if you're sitting next to Maria, Charlie, Kenzie, you're losing. So what do you think, though, if that is the 3? If the 3 goats make it to the end, which could be a very likely scenario at this point, considering we saw the tide turn and Liz actually work with Q on this vote to go after Tiffany, what do you think is the result of that, if that's the final 3?
That's the final 3. I mean, listen, man, I think that what Q has proved is that I think among those 3, he's probably the most likable. People have been trying to get him out over and over and over again, and he continues to kind of skate by and slither through. And I think what's really wonderful about that as a game player is that he is going to be able to sit there and go, I never had a moment to be safe, or a moment to kind of like sit and relax, which I don't think Liz and Venus can really say, because the problem with Venus is that Venus had a really, really hard time in the beginning, but ever since she kind of moved through past that, she hasn't been the game player, and people have kind of pushed her to the side in terms of like, hey, you're not really threatening us anymore, so we're not as worried about you. And Liz, I think, has just rubbed so many people the wrong way that I don't think they really respect her game too much. I don't think they respect her personality too much. I don't think they hate her by any sense of, like, in any sense of the imagination, but like I think that Q is going to come in with the hardest kind of game, not with the hardest game to sell, but like the most present game to sell, and I think he's going to be able to do a really good job of selling it. So I think that it's going to come down to like, yeah, Q might have rubbed a couple of people the wrong way, but like, I mean, look at him, look at his relationship with Tiff, his relationship with Kenzie, his relationship with oh my god, who am I missing right now? Someone not Hunter, who
Tevin?
Yeah, look, like his relationship with Tevin, like he had these close bonds with people, severed them, and still came out on top. And I think that that's going to be really appealing to a jury that wanted him gone for so long, but he made the right moves to get to the end and sit with the two people who he knew not only, did they not play as well as he did, he was going to be able to sit there and say like, hey, look at where all of you are. And look where I am. Remember when I said I wanted to go home and instead you went home? Like, I think that you see it. Listen, man, getting Q on my fantasy team. Do you remember at that point? I think he's the last person I got on my fantasy team because we were so convinced he was going home. I convinced he couldn't go home.
I feel like, either Q or Tim fell to you because you got Hunter and Charlie off the bat. You weren't even there to draft, and you have like the best draft team. But here's the thing, and I think this is what's interesting is Austin brings up a good point. What if it's not the two goats? What if we do see Kenzie, Maria, Ben, Charlie together in the end? And we'll talk about that in a sec. But of that three that I proposed, I'm actually in Carly's boat. I think Liz. The thing with Liz is that while people don't like her, Liz got Tevin out herself. She got the numbers to rally, and she was the swing vote in this vote to send Tiff home. So if she is able to play that and say, look, I wanted Tevin out, I got Tevin out. I wanted Soda out, I got Soda out. Whether that is actually true or not, that is the way we're, the audience, perceiving it. And I do think that is what she could sell to the jury. Now, the only problem is the fact that she's told everyone she's a billionaire. And that's, I think, something that just never really going to get her much love from a jury. That's kind of why Mike White never won, because he didn't need the money. And I think that's kind of the thing I'm going back and forth with Liz and Q. I do agree. I think Venus is just someone who's just not going to get votes because I just don't think they see her game. They respect her. And like you said, she's actually getting the people out she wants to get out. Her whole goal was to get rid of Nami. It's just her and Liz now. She got out Nami literally back to back. Soda, Tevin, Hunter. That is Venus's story. But I think that's where Venus's story ends. I think that was her story. And now she's, as we're seeing, she gets 0 confessionals this past episode. I think it's because now she's kind of fading in the background. Because honestly, I think everyone left doesn't really mind Venus anymore. Like, no one's really like, ugh, Venus. It really was Tevin, Soda, and Hunter leading that train because they had to spend all that time on Nami with her. So I really think between Liz and Q, I think Q, if he really plays hard this next few weeks, I think he could win. But I just think enough of the jury is going to be like, you tried to quit, you wanted to leave, and he confirmed he did want to go. It wasn't a gameplay. I really think they would go to Liz only because Liz did have that Tevin move. She had the move where she is the swing vote and voted out Tiffany. She is the reason Tiffany went home. As much as Q wants to claim it as his move, as much as other people want to claim it as theirs, Kenzie put the idea out there. Maria got the ball rolling, and Maria did organize the boot. But the big thing was that Maria needed to get Liz because Maria couldn't trust Venus enough to get Venus. She went to Liz. And if Liz had said, no, he didn't give me my burger, I'm not voting Q, I'm voting Q out. She had put her foot down like she put her foot down for Tevin. Q goes home. And I think, honestly, I was waiting for Liz to go to Tiffany and be like, play your idol and let's get Q out. But she didn't. She actually voted Tiffany out. Do you see a world where Liz and Q do work together? Or do you think it's more of just like a, listen, we both know we could beat the other person. Let's try to go thinking they could beat the other people? Like, because in my mind, Q has to want to bring Liz and Venus wants to bring Liz and Q. The only problem is I feel like Liz and Q don't get along enough to where, like Austin said, what if the goats don't end up to the end together? Because I think Q and Liz right now don't like each other. I mean, we saw perhaps the biggest moment of Survivor history of the new era in Liz's burger blow up. And Zach, what did you think about that? Because she literally pleading her life that she gets to go on this Applebee's reward to eat a burger, and then Q doesn't take her. Specifically says, I'm taking people that didn't vote for me, Liz, and you voted for me. And then Jeff asks her how she's feeling. She takes a second, turns, and then unleashes on Jeff and on everyone. This is the most screaming like this I've heard since All Stars with Sue Hawk. Like, Zach, what did you think of this moment? And do you think there's any way Liz and Q work together going forward? Or do you think it's more of like a vote by vote basis? They might vote the same way, but they're never truly locked in, you know?
So this, if I'm honest with you, this is my reasoning as to why I actually don't think Liz wins in the end if she's there. Because I just part of a jury and part of the respect of a jury has to do with personality and also like not for nothing like how you handle your game. You know, we know that people when they get on a jury really think about not just how you played the game, not just did you play the game well, not just, you know, what are your moves, but they also think about like the way you left them and the way that you kind of leave the impression on them. And to me, like if we're adding a couple of things up, Liz letting them know that she's a billionaire, the billionaire like throwing a temper tantrum for not getting an Applebee's burger, and
which is so funny because it's like of all the restaurants, like, and this is not to judge anyone who goes to Applebee's or whatever, but it doesn't strike you that a multi-billionaire would eat at Applebee's,
right,
let alone be such a fan of Applebee's that they have this tantrum. But I get it also because I don't even think it was about the food because she's allergic to everything. Because I think there's a way for Liz in her contract to negotiate that she's going to get rice or she's going to die, and that's what we saw Jeff do. Is he gave her a literal regular portion of rice for her. If she sat out of the challenge, it still came at a cost. But I don't think it was the allergy thing. I don't think it was the fact that she was hungry or that she wanted that burger specifically. I think it was that she wanted that memory because it's her kid. Like, I think that's the reason she was so pissed, is that it was her kid brought into it. And that's why I think at the end, if they do say you blew up, temper tantrum, all this stuff, she can spin it in a way, or at least I would spin it in a way where it's like, I did it because I love my kid, and Applebee's is me and my kid. And, you know, right here, Austin says, I don't think her blow up was viewed negatively by anyone but Q out there. Yeah, you're right. I mean, to the audience, it's a little negative, but I think they did enough of a job explaining why she had this emotional attachment. It's just going to be very interesting because I think, like you said, this is such a wild and chaotic season that I truly don't know when all is said and done at the end who is going to come out on top if Kenzie. I'll say right now, if Kenzie, Maria, and Charlie are in the end, because even Ben, I think, would be an interesting case where I could see him being a Mike Turner and just not owning any sort of game and them not respecting that. You know,
and I think the thing about it is right now, I don't think there really is a world where we see all three goats at the end. I don't. I think that this season is too heavy with great players. I mean, like we can move along kind of away from them and move towards. I mean, like look at Maria. First of all,
great movie. She's doing great.
I was like a proud father because I was like that kind of gameplay made my like feel so good with like that. I don't know, man, like picking her for my winner pick, like that just, it felt right. It felt like the right thing to do. But I thought that like what it proved was that between having people like Charlie who have such a great run of immunity wins already, people like Maria who are her great quote about like running the red light, like this a group of people who are willing to make really, really tough choices. The other thing is like, I think because of a choice like this to get rid of Tiffany, the only thing that kind of comes to mind is I do think that we probably run the risk this episode of seeing someone safe, quote unquote, safe go home. Like we run the risk of seeing a Liz or a Q go home because you like first of all, we see them that they are searching high and low for this immunity idol. They're trying to find it now that it's been rehidden, like, or whatever it might be. And I think that to see Hunter, then Tiffany, followed immediately out by someone like Maria or Charlie or even Kenzie, which I mean, I think that would just be, that would be kind of a little too hard to swallow. And I think that editing wise, they've kind of done a really good job with us of like, they have built up this Q Liz rivalry for the past 3 episodes. So I do think that we're probably going to see it come to a head because like we were talking about before, I don't think that Liz is ever going to be able and willing to work with Q. I think Q would not be opposed, but I just don't think that Liz will ever open up that door. And I think that she's going to try her very hardest. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised, truthfully speaking, if we saw her find the idol and utilize it to get Q out, which I think would, if anything, be like the worst possible move she could do. And I could absolutely see them kind of giving her this edit of like, you know, really push like the tantrum, the like fiery burn for Q, the everything like culminating into this moment of like, she finds the idol and gets him out. And then everybody looks at that as like, that's what you did with your idol. Like it seems so fitting for kind of like the character journey, which then does a really good job at making the way for Maria for Charlie, who I think just like Maria and Charlie are doing everything that Shannon Ricard could not fully follow through on, which I
Right.
love.
Well,
seeing.
because the thing with Shannon and Ricard is that they eventually knew they had to take each other out. And I think that's something you even see because they keep bringing up parallels to Denise and Malcolm from season 25. And the thing with Denise and Malcolm is they also eventually had to turn on each other, but they did it at the final four. And it was a 2-2, and then it ended up being a 3-1. So I think it's one of those scenarios where I really do think, Maria and Charlie, they know they can't win unless the other one's out. But I just don't know if they're thinking we got to get each other out now
or we got to get each other out in fire. We got to get I think that the good thing about who's left in the game is that, first of all, to see Kenzie at the end would be awesome. I love her journey this season. Mm-hmm. She was someone who I was like, ugh, I don't like, to someone who I'm like, wow, she has probably had the toughest road since merge so far. Like, she's kind of like flip-flopped back and forth, figuring out kind of what to do, where to situate herself. I like watching Kenzie a lot. I would love to see her at the end. But I think the good thing is, like, if anything, Charlie and Maria are going to look to take, a Q or a Liz or a Venus with them to the end, get them to like a 4, and then say, hey, listen, we can't both win with each other here. I can imagine. Here's what I will say is that I don't know how safe Charlie is if he doesn't win an immunity for the next couple of rounds, because I think, and again, if we want to get into safety rankings, we can. He is not at the bottom of my ranking, I will say that. But I do think that he is now entering territory, especially at 7, when you have 2 wins, and you're getting,
and Hunter's, and the thing is, Hunter and Tevin are gone too. So it's like you have 2 wins, and if you look at the rest, Venus and Kenzie and Liz are all fairly small, haven't been that great in challenges. Especially Liz and Kenzie have not been good in challenges. Kenzie won immunity, but it was a balance on water, which feels like the type of challenge she would win. Right. But if it's anything agility based, as we saw in this reward challenge, Kenzie isn't that great in that. And then Ben has been okay, but has never really, done much. And in terms of challenges, and then the Q is all talk, but still has not won a challenge except for the reward when he really knew he had to win it. So that's the thing, is like, I think right now Charlie's biggest competition for immunities is Maria, which is very interesting.
But the good thing is, as long as they continue to keep each other around, they know that they kind of hold a lot of the cards. I mean, keeping Charlie and Maria off the table as options, like the other one winning immunity, one of them winning immunity, and then trying to leverage kind of the other one's position, is going to be their best move moving forward for them, I think, because I mean, it pretty much ensures that they'll be in control of what's happening we're at 7. They really only need 3 more rounds of it. But I can see at the end, them having like a whoever is left between Liz and Q and a Venus, and then the 2 of them, and then looking at each other and saying like, hey, listen, we got to take each other out in fire because we know that we can't both go.
And that's what the opposite happened in Ghost Island, where it was Wendell and Dom running the whole game. And at the end, instead of turning on one another, because Dom knew he had to take out Wendell in fire, instead he sent Wendell into fire with Angela, and Wendell swept her. And then he loses to Wendell by a vote in a tiebreaker. So it's one of those things where it's like, if Dom had just taken Wendell into fire, he might have lost fire, but at least then Wendell would have won having taken out Dom instead of winning by 1 vote. I think, honestly, losing by 1 vote is even worse than just losing in fire, because at least fire, you had the control to beat him. And I get there's more money if you get 2nd place versus 4th. So I think, and that's another thing that I think they're thinking about too, is like, I mean, are they going to let Venus, Liz, and Q get so deep in the game? Because also you got to think about it. If Venus gets 4th place, she's making more money than anyone else on that jury. And I think that's something they're also thinking about too, with Liz being a billionaire and with Q being so entitled and wanting to quit. I think that kind of the meta-ness comes in the back of your brain too, of like, do I want to sit with them, even though it's an easier beat? Do I want them to get the money? And I think that's where Q's coming from with the whole honor and loyalty thing. And that's why I think a lot of players do play with honor and loyalty, because they'd rather, if there's going to be a lot of money given, they want to lose to someone who's going to earn that money rather than bringing a GOAT, knowing that the GOAT, if you both get 0 votes at the end, you still get the same amount of money as someone who did less than you. Like, I think that's a lot of the frustration. But I just want to bring up some comments here. First off, this is where I think the game is going to be so interesting if she does make the end, because you have Matt here saying, I felt a lot of empathy for Liz. I think people are being way too mean. She's a person. I agree. I think she is entitled to feel upset. But then you also have Carly who's saying, I do think Liz was acting a bit untitled, expecting Q to take her. And I think it's really interesting. I did hear this in interviews as well, Austin, where Q basically shut it down when Tiffany and Kenzie offered to give or Tiffany and Maria No, sorry, Maria and Kenzie. Tiffany wanted to go on the reward, but Kenzie and Maria offered to give their spots up to Liz, and Q was like, nope, not at all, because Jeff was like, it's your call, Q, it's your reward, and Q said, no, I'm taking the people I want at the end, because he's thinking strategically. He's not thinking about, because he realistically doesn't think he's going to work with Liz. And look, even though he didn't take Liz, he still ended up voting with Liz, so it ended up being the right move for Q. And Carly says, I wish that they had kept that in. And another big thing, and this can segue us into our rankings because this is very important, and this is kind of what we've been talking about all episode right now, is like, are Charlie and Maria going to take each other out now, or are they going to wait? What's going to happen? Because Austin did say apparently there was a plan set in motion for a period of time where Charlie had come to Tiff with a plan to use her idol to take out Maria because Maria was putting Tiff's name out there. Now, the thing is, I do think if Charlie were to turn on Maria, there's a double-edged thing here. They're either going to make it this huge epic moment, which is why they didn't want to foreshadow it here, or it's not going to happen, and that's why they didn't waste time showing it in this episode. So I think it could be one or the other. But let's get into our rankings. We have about 15 minutes left. Carly says there are no alliances, and yes, that's true. I think this is just such an all-over-the-place game. I've had this person lower on my rankings because I always worried, being so close to Tiff, that this person could be taken out with a stray bullet. But actually, I'm putting Kenzie at number 1, and I'll tell you why. I think Kenzie... she's my winner pick for the season, so I want to root for her now. I think Venus's shots of winning are pretty low, so I'm going to put my eggs in Kenzie's basket. But I'm putting Kenzie at 1 because I think Tiff going home, as much as it sucks, is the best thing for Kenzie, because I don't think anyone's going to see her as a huge threat. Also, because think about it, Kenzie last week put Tiffany's name out there. She didn't put Tiffany's name out there this week, and Tiffany went home this week. So now, if I'm Charlie or I'm Maria, and I'm like, why would I want to get rid of Kenzie when at the end you can say, well, Kenzie mentioned her name the last week, but we're the ones who got her out. Kenzie didn't vote Tiff out. This was not Kenzie's move. It's kind of like the Venus Tevin thing of like, Tevin didn't take the shot at Soda. He put the idea out there, but ultimately he didn't vote Soda out, which means that if he were to make it to the end, it would have been a harder sell for the jury. And I think that's the same thing here, where I don't think Kenzie's going to have as big a case in the end for the Tiff move. Now, she can still make moves until then, and I think if she's sitting next to Liz, Q, and Venus, I still think Kenzie wins handily. I'm a little worried, though, if Kenzie does sit against Charlie or Maria, because I do think right now, Charlie and Maria are, I think, right now the biggest prospects to win just in terms of resume. But I do think Kenzie's so likable, but I also think Charlie and Maria think that because Tiffany went home, Kenzie's not a threat right now. I really think they're going to look at someone else. So I have Kenzie at 1, but I could also see a world where she goes, because I think any of these 7 are vulnerable. Also, because we don't know who's going to find the idol, and even if they do, who cares? Because the last 2 episodes, people have gone out with idols. Who's your number 1, Zach?
Dylan, we've come a long way, her and I.
I can't wait for this. She's my number 2. Say it.
I put Venus at number 1.
Yes!
And truly, I mean, like, listen, I have stuck true to my word. She always stays towards the top now. And I mean, Dylan, unfortunately, for not the reasons you want. I do think that Venus at this point, to take Venus out is kind of a fool's errand.
Yep. Unless she does end up making a huge move and getting some win equity.
And listen, here's the thing, right? Is that we sat here saying there's no way Gabler can win this season. There's no way Gabler can win this season. There's no way Gabler's going to win this season. And then what happens at the end? The worst move to ever happen in Survivor history. It's fine. But again, like we absolutely could sit here and say like, hey, Venus has got no shot at winning. What I will say is that I don't think the perception from any of them is that Venus has a shot at winning, which is great for Venus because she's pretty much guaranteed to spot final 3. If I'm thinking, if I'm thinking the way that I am. Now, here's the thing about Venus that I will say is that she does have a really cool opportunity to start kind of calling some shots, especially like now, right around this point in the game is when you want to start making not like some big moves, but I mean like big moves, obviously, but you want to start situating yourself to be able to have a case to make at the end. And she has a really great, the stupid thing I've learned from orgs, hi Austin, is that people don't really care about your pre-merge. They care about your post-merge. Mm-hmm. The pre-merge takes up like 5% of what people really care about when you're talking, but it's really what happens once you guys merge and once you have to start kind of really thinking for yourself that people care about. And right now, the problem is I don't think Venus has a ton of stuff to say about this merge that really she has ownership over. Especially when you have someone like Maria who took a really, really big shot. I can't remember who the idea for Hunter came from off the top of my head, but it's not her. And, she could sit there and be like, well, I was talking about Hunter for, a really long time. That's great. But like we were saying, right? Like Tevin had the idea for Soda, but if you're not the one actively pulling the trigger, you didn't make the shot. So how does she sell herself? that's why she's at number 1 for me, because right
Yeah.
now I don't think anyone thinks she has a shot at selling herself. And
Right.
I mean, it's a pretty good read.
Yeah.
She's
She's my
followed.
number 2 for that reason. I think she's right now, unless she royally does something to F up, I think she's in our final 3.
Yeah. She is followed for me by Ben. Ben,
He's
again,
my number 3 for similar reasons. Yeah.
well, and then Kenzie is my number 3. So we have the same top 3, it kind of like reorganized. But I put Ben a little bit higher than Kenzie, just because, again, I think that there might be a world where people look at Kenzie as a little bit of a threat because of the way that her brain's kind of working. She might be one step ahead and doesn't actually, have the ability to pull the trigger just yet, but that does not mean that people might not see that as a threat. Whereas Ben, I think, again, kind of just like, if sitting there, Ben is great socially, but Ben, again, doesn't really have a lot of moves under his belt for his own benefit. And I think that people, again, when you're trying to think about who you're going to have the best time up against, yeah, people might feel, and again, this could be someone's downfall. People are sitting there like, oh, Ben, they all just like Ben, but he doesn't have anything to say. That doesn't matter all the time. Like, that's not really.
Well, and ultimately, that is the Gabler thing of like,
Right.
At the end, all you have to do is have one move on your the problem is Ben doesn't have a move on his resume. Like,
Right.
Gabler had Ellie on his resume. The thing is, Ben doesn't have that. But again, if you're in the end with Q, Liz, and Venus, all you have to do is say, no one wanted to target me because you all liked me.
Right.
And I think there's a thing with Ben that's just charming. And yeah, Austin says it best. I wish Ben had a better edit because he is in the best position right now to do whatever he wants.
100%.
I don't think anyone's going to target him. And look, the one time they targeted him last week when it was the split vote with Hunter and Q, Ben got 1 vote because Q voted for him because they wanted to leave Q out of the vote. But everyone who was when they pitched Ben, everyone shot it down. Everyone was like, nope, not happening, because they don't want Ben out of here because he's a loyal number. And who is he loyal to? I don't know, but he is.
It doesn't
loyal.
matter. And that's the thing. It doesn't really matter who he's loyal to. Truth be told, Ben doesn't need to be loyal to anybody, because at the end of the day, he is a number. He is a vote, and your vote in Survivor is so powerful, but it's probably the most, like, the person Ben is the most important person in almost every single person's game right now, because, again, if you're thinking about it this way, right? If we have 7 people left, if everybody votes for one another, all Ben has to, like, if Venus votes for Kenzie and Kenzie votes for blah, 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 like, they all just vote for one person each, Ben is the person that I'm sure they're all looking at and going, oh, like, if Charlie and Maria decide to take each other out, but Q wants to get Liz and Liz wants to get Q, and, Kenzie is like, oh, it actually, like, we really need to focus on whoever it is. And now Ben is sitting there like, oh, my vote decides everything. That is the game that Ben is playing right now. He is everybody's like, oh, I've got Ben in the bag. Right?
Right.
And it's the Andy Herron of Big Brother. Everybody thinks that they got Andy, but
yeah, no, I agree with you. And I think the thing with Andy is the fact that Big Brother, you get 3 episodes a week and you get live feeds. We knew Andy's game better. I think if we were to watch live feeds of Survivor, I think Ben would be everyone's like number 1, because I think Ben, the only thing that he doesn't have is the edit right now. And that's something that could be, you still have 2 or 3 episodes. You can build a bigger edit. Like, we've seen edits really come out of the blue. I mean, Erica's came a little earlier on rewatch, like, than we realized, but we weren't even thinking of her as a winner until the very last minute, until Ricard went, really.
Yeah.
So number 4, and this might be controversial, I put her at the bottom for the past few weeks, but I'm putting Liz there because I really think this was the week where she had a big blow up and was still never targeted, and she was a swing vote, but I don't think people are looking at it as her move. I think people are going to look at it as Maria's move. I think Kenzie's going to want blood, and she's not looking for Liz. I think Liz is also someone like Ben that people just want as a number, as a vote, because she hasn't been loyal, and I think they still think they can beat her at the end. I've been really down on Liz, and I still don't think she's going to win unless she's sitting next to Q and Venus, but I still think she is more of a player than I give her credit for. And I have been loving watching her play, even though I've heard behind the scenes stuff about her, but I'm not going to say any of that right now. Just horror stories from things. Yeah,
she's my number 5. With not a whole lot to say that we haven't already said. A lot of this episode has already kind of been dedicated to her. So, then number 4 for me is Charlie. And the reason that Charlie is sitting at 4, I really wanted to put him kind of right smack dab in the middle, because like we've alluded to, I think that Charlie really has the best opportunity every week now to win immunity. He is the strongest competitor outside of maybe Q, and depending on like the different type of challenge, like obviously, so not everyone is built for every challenge. However, Charlie seems to me actually like he is kind of built for every challenge. He's that perfect stature. He's got enough, he's got enough muscle that like he can hold his own with no Hunter, with no Tevin. Like I think that Charlie should be the favorite. The odds should always be in his favor going into an immunity challenge right now. The problem is if he loses the immunity challenge, what do they do? Because I can see a world where this week, they decide like we all want to get Charlie out, and Liz is like I said it sort of before. Liz is the one who finds the idol and goes, I don't want to get Charlie out, and she forces a Q out by finding out that they're going to get rid of Charlie and idling him and making sure he's safe, and then taking out Q. Like that to me is I put Charlie so kind of smack dab in the middle because he doesn't necessarily have the move. Like I think he's a great game player and he has a lot of longevity still. But I think the other thing is like people will only see him as a threat if they want to start winning immunities. And sometimes you don't need the immunity win. Like sometimes you just need the numbers. So I think that for me, I mean, that's why he sits above Maria in my ranking, because I think Maria is probably in more danger than he is because of that reason.
Yeah. I'll because we only have a few more minutes, but I have Q at 5. I just think he's someone who right now is always a safe bet, but I do just in my gut I feel like we're gonna see him at least in the finale, maybe not final 3, but like I just feel like he is the character of the season. He is the main character of the season, whether he wins or not. And I just feel like just based on how he's reacting on social media too, he's almost like on his high horse in a way that like if he were to go out in like 7th, I don't know if that would be the case. But at number 6 and 7 is where I do have Charlie and Maria, and I did decide to actually put Charlie above Maria, and it pains me to do it. But the trend this season has been the person who takes out the biggest threat goes home next. It was like, oh, Tevin took out. It was Tevin's move to take out Soto. Okay, Tevin's out next. Hunter wasn't responsible for taking out Tevin, but Hunter was the biggest threat next. He goes home, and then who took out Hunter? Tiffany. Oh, Tiffany's out now. Like it's one of those things where I feel like the next biggest threat goes out, and right now Maria is the biggest threat because of the move she pulled. So I do think Maria is the most likely to go home, but this is the hardest week to predict because I have no idea. I really do have no idea. I could see a world where anyone goes home, really, except for probably Kenzie and Venus and Ben right now. Like, I could see them just getting out Liz or Q or going after Charlie and Maria. And I think the question is going to be if Charlie and Maria go after each other now or at the end. And I think if they don't go after each other now, I'll probably put them in the 1-2 spot until the finale, until they have to take out each other. Rattle off your bottom 2, though, between Maria and Q. Who's going home?
So listen, Q's at the bottom because I just think that like I can't in good conscience put Maria at the bottom because she's my winner pick. My other thing though is that like I just have this narrative that I've apparently built in my head where I think that Liz tries to be flashy and ends up taking out Q, and people are like, who cares? Because that just seems so fitting for the edit that she's gotten. And again, to Matt's point from earlier, and I'll make this like a quick 30-second thing, right? Like, I think the cool thing about this season is that we've got some villains, we've got some heroes, but what's cool is that I think that all of them are just such good people from what I can tell.
Even Q. I think he's generally from seeing him on social media, he's a good guy.
Yeah,
like he's just very chaotic. Yeah.
And what's good is that also I think that it's wrong to not treat people like humans on the internet. I think it's rude. I think it's gross. I don't approve of it at all. And I agree with Matt. Like, I think that some of the criticism that all of them get is a little too harsh.
And even my first reaction was like, "Oh my god, you got to be kidding me!" But also, it's because it's such a big, flashy moment that like you don't get in Survivor a lot, and it's more so me just reveling in the character of it all rather than being like, oh, it's more like I can't believe this is happening.
It's like we go back to when Hannah left last season, and people were so mad, and it's like, yeah, but she's still a person, so like don't. Your words mean more than you know. And then Dylan, I mean, we have like 30 seconds, but I mean, you now know my rankings. We did not talk about the most important thing, and I can't believe we didn't talk about it, but we now know that season 50 is a returnee season.
I know, and I think we could do a whole podcast on that. Maybe we table it for later.
Not bring it up. Very exciting. Twitter is blowing up. We see like alliances are forming. We don't even know what it is.
The pre-gaming is insane already. And it's funny to see who's been left out too. Like Jelitsky's like, put me in a group chat, guys. Like, it's really funny. But
we don't know All-Stars, we don't know what it is yet, but we know something is coming, and I'm very excited.
And Jeff said, don't rule out pre-40 players, and that is the most exciting part about that, is that there will be pre-40 players on it as well, or at least in the running for it. It could still end up being a new era All-Stars, but that's a whole conversation probably for next week. But thanks for watching Recipe for Reality here on the live stream.